Hey everyone, it's Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have a review for a game that I've loved for a very, very long time. I've sunk so many hours into this game, and I actually just replayed the story for the first time in probably 15 years, since about 3 or 4 years after the original release. Basically, there was a game that my cousin introduced me to back when my parents split up in 2004. It was probably closer to 2006 or 2007, somewhere in that ballpark when I first played this for the first time ever, maybe even 2008. It was somewhere in the middle of the middle school years, and every other weekend I would go over to my grandparents in my dad's side of the family, or on my dad's side of the family, and my cousin pretty much lived at that house, a couple of my cousins as a matter of fact, and this particular cousin was a boy. His name is Trenton. Trenton, if you happen to be watching this video, dude, I love you. And he showed me a game that was sitting on top of our PS2 console we played all the time. We didn't have a 360 over at that particular grandparent's house, so we just kind of played PS2. Yes, in middle school. Roughly about 2007 or so, as I said. Anyway, he asked me about a game that was sitting somewhere on top of the PS2, and I picked it up and looked at it, and it said Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the very thing I'm currently talking about, my first ever GTA game. And I asked him about it, and I asked him what it was. Mind you, I was at that age where I was starting to get into cars, not being a kid who was into Hot Wheels and shit when I was a kid, but at this current time, I was like, what is this? And he started to tell me about things about it. The first thing I remember him saying, word for word, is, "You've never heard of GTA San Andreas." And I looked at him with dead eyes and said no. Needless to say, he put it in. I remember the opening music to the credits while this thing is loading up on the PlayStation 2, the current version I'm currently recording and reviewing about, because this is the story I actually played through, not the definitive edition. I just got another copy of that to be able to play it for the Switch, and I really love it, don't get me wrong. This game is not glitchless like people try to say, by the way. Yeah, it's a better release for sure, but it's not bugless, glitchless, anything like that. I miss the old days of things like this, and it's kind of what I want to center this channel around a little bit, about how older games from when I was a kid and from when I was a teen, they typically actually worked on release. You couldn't do a digital patch. You couldn't fix bugs and shit on an unfinished game at that time. I remember the days when Heavy Rain and Alan Wake took 12 years to make. That was an old thing that happened, if you don't know about that. Anyway, I played this so much on that Saturday night. My cousin and I pretty much always regularly stayed up, very late. And on Sunday, when I left to go back to my mom's house, I remember going out to a store that's dead now. It became an FYE. And then that's gone now too. Not the actual franchise, but just that particular location. It was a great place to get anything from movies to video games and all kinds of things. I used to see Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories on the PS2 and the PSP very, very frequently out at this place, which is kind of depressing when you see the prices it's worth now. I'm glad I got my copies when I did in recent years. Anyway, so this game I fell in love with. I went out that very Sunday after I got home with my mom, a couple of hours before that store was going to close down that became an FYE. And I bought the game, and I came home and played it on PS2. And it took me roughly a month, because I only had a couple hours to play it every day after school before dinner time and homework and all that came into play. And I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with this game. Everything from the music to it taking place in the 1990s, everything about it that I could have wanted it to succeed at, it succeeded at. And again, being at that time when people my age were into things like Fast and Furious 1 and 2, 3 had just come out, so people were into the whole drifting thing. That's when drifting became a very common thing in America because of Tokyo Drift the movie, which I still will say is my personal favorite of all of the Fast and Furious movies. I don't care what anybody says, it's the best one. Anyway, this game sucked me into everything from my interest into racing to crime stories, which I had already seen, like things like Goodfellas and Scarface, things like that by the time I got to this in Vice City. I was a big fan of things like that from seeing the TV versions of them, The Godfather, for example. And this game was like nothing I'd ever played. I'd never heard of really an open world game, aside from like the main lobby in fucking Lego Star Wars, the original PS2 one. I'd never had an open world game. I'd never heard of like Shadow of the Colossus or anything like that. I had never seen something like that and really actually played it, even though I've been playing PlayStation 1 since that was my first console ever, back in like the 90s when I was born. You know, I've been playing this stuff forever. I was playing games for a long time. And maybe you could say my PlayStation experience was mostly the kind of stuff that Nintendo would have put out. That very cartoonish nature to things. This was rated M, so, you know, I didn't get a chance to really jump into this. My family didn't really push me towards stuff like that, even though I grew up on horror films, which is odd. Anyway, this game is amazing. And playing it this time around again on the PlayStation 2, the exact same copy that I have sitting right here in front of me was the one I bought back then at that store that used to be what it was before FYE came around and bought it out. The game is still great. Yes, it's flawed. Yes, some parts of it haven't aged perfectly, but for the time, and even now, playing it again, getting used to the PS2 controller, having to memorize cheats again because I fucking suck at Grand Theft Auto games and I need cheats to beat this in Vice City and GTA 3, I played this all over again and fell in love with it all over again. And even now, even after like a few weeks after I beat this game, well, closer to a month after I beat the game, I beat it the weekend before Ray Liotta died, by the way, and started playing Vice City again, which I also beat, and I'll have a review up pretty soon, in the next couple of days, I hope. When I started playing Vice City again, fucking Ray Liotta, the lead actor for that, and from Goodfellas, died like 3 days later, like a Wednesday, I think is what it was. It was so sad, so gut-wrenching, and the fucking timing was impeccable. Good job, Ray. Anyway, so I played the hell out of this game for about a month after I got it, and I never stopped. Even after I had beaten the story and had loved it, and I loved the character CJ, I played the crap out of this forever, flying planes around, committing terrorist acts, doing all kinds of things with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas that I probably shouldn't have done at that age. It might have even seemed like a fantasy trip at some point. But this is before I was able to get a 360. This is before I was able to get Grand Theft Auto 4 and hadn't really known that that had come out yet or anything. I'm assuming... But by the time I was into GTA, it was already massively popular. Vice City had already come and gone. I hadn't even heard of that when I played this for the first time. And immediately I started grabbing up all the games I could for GTA. I don't own 1 or London, but I want to get them at some point, even though they're completely different. This started off my love for open world games. I got into Saints Row games. I got into... Fuck, what else is there? The Mafia series. I loved Mafia 2 when that came out. There were so many games out there that got me into this open world setting for games. Especially Saints Row 2. Saints Row 2 I played maybe not too long after I beat this game. Is when I got an Xbox 360. I got Saints Row 2 and GTA 4. And I played the hell out of this, dude. I played the absolute hell out of GTA San Andreas, Saints Row 2. And to me, personally, when GTA 4 came out, as much as I still love that game to this day, and I do think it is one of the best GTA games up there with this game, with Vice City, I will personally say that I think Saints Row 2, not so much the first one one's kind of its own cartoonish entity, but the second one kind of took over as a spiritual successor to what GTA, specifically San Andreas, was, with the music and the actions, the kind of action in the actual story, the 3 or 4 different storylines going on, the insanity to it, the kind of cheat codes you could use, the changing of clothing, which they removed in GTA, they kind of had it in GTA 4. That wasn't the greatest. Like, every outfit feels like it looks the same because of the color scheme and how dark and gray everything is. Anyway, San Andreas, what is this game about? After 10 minutes of rambling, you guys probably already know the story of this, but GTA San Andreas is about a fellow named CJ, who is from Liberty City. Yes, the very famous Liberty City from GTA 3. And he goes back to San Andreas, particularly his hometown, where his mom's house used to be, because he basically is going back after his mom is murdered. Nobody knows who killed her. It was kind of just a gang territory thing, probably. He gets back, sees his brother Sweet, who he has kind of a bad relationship with. Sweet looks at him as a guy that just ran away, from his problems. Especially after their other brother died, named Brian. He also has a sister there named, what the hell is her name? Candace, I think? I can't remember. She's not in the game as much as you'd think. She's in it pretty early on and then kind of vanishes for most of the story till the tail end of the story. Anyway, CJ's trying to figure out what happened to his mom. He's also kind of dealing with mind you, this is a very 1990s game. It is a 90s setting for the timeline. So the kind of music, particularly on Radio X, is very themed with things like Danzig, for example. This is the game that introduced me to Mother by Danzig, and when I still play this game to this day, I listen to that particular station constantly. Even though I think all the stations have good music on them, that is my personal favorite, Radio X. Do I think it is a better soundtrack than Vice City? Probably not. Every single channel in Vice City I look forward to listening to. This particular game, Radio X, and a few others are really the big ones I go for. But between the setting and between the different locations that you have that you can go to and really enjoy the atmospheres of, the kind of design for the game, they're just wonderful. You start off in kind of a projects, if you will. And it's kind of sad to say that, but it kind of is, where CJ grew up in his house. And even this house, it's supposed to be ghetto. It's supposed to be run down. And when I play this game, I still feel nostalgic and love for this particular home. And I love how in this game, by the way, not like in Vice City, not like in GTA 3, not really even like GTA 4 or 5 for that matter, you can buy homes. Which when I was a kid, it wasn't just about stealing cars and riding motorcycles and all these things I wanted to do one day in the future when I became an adult. It was also about the opportunity to be able to do things like that and buy literally homes. I know most of the interiors are the same thing, but there's a few variations that made it kind of fun. You can have like a house by the beach. You can have there's like a carnival thing in one area. I mean, you don't realize how fun this game could be. And I kind of wondered going into it this time, me growing up all these years, I haven't played this game in probably 6 years, 8 years, somewhere in there. It's been a long time, but the last time I really was invested in this was about 14 or 13 years ago, where I literally, every single day when I came home from school, I was still playing the game. Even when I was a big 360 fan and PS3 fan, I was still playing this. I would have days where I just wanted to invest time in this and in GTA 4. I spent hours of time on this. And that was even before I had the obsession, if you will, with Black Ops 1, the Call of Duty game. I played the hell out of that too. Still think it's the best Call of Duty. I don't care what anybody says, at least story mode wise. Modern Warfare 2 comes kind of close. Anyway, the features on this game, the guns on this game, all these things that you can use are so much fun, but the story is really engaging. I love how in the hometown that CJ is from, he actually has a group of friends. So for example, there's not just him and Sweet that kind of run this place called Grove Street where CJ's home is. There's also There's also Ryder, who is basically Eazy-E from NWA. Looks just like him, talks just like him. It's great. I love it. Lives next door. Then you also have Big Smoke, which everybody knows the meme of Big Smoke where he's in the drive-thru at a fast food place, clucking bell, and he keeps ordering all this food like, I'll take a number 9, like that. We all love it. Everybody who hasn't even played GTA loves it. It's a great meme. I think that the characters in this game, aside from one who won't stop beating off all the time, every scene he's rubbing himself, it's really genuinely gross. Pretty much every character in this game I really love, especially characters like Woozy, The Truth, who is a hippie basically, and he just smokes all the time. He's basically a Cheech and Chong caricature, and I love him. Mad Dog is great. I love all of this stuff. I love where the story even ends up by the end of the game. And it seems to me it's even larger than what people give it credit for. I still think the landscape here is almost bigger than Liberty City in GTA 4, no matter what people seem to say about that. I love the environments. I love how, Vice City and GTA 3 are kind of cartoonish in their own rights as video games. San Andreas seem to really love that and really envelop that. There's everything from, at the time, mind you, when this game was out and popular, when I first got into it even, back in 2007 or 8 or so, when I got into it, one of the biggest things I had as a time sink was when my cousin showed me mods about putting like Lamborghinis and Ferraris and stuff, especially because I was into Ferrari Enzos because of the Red Line movie. There were so many things that I was obsessed with that I wanted to see in this game, and I would watch, there's one particular couple of sets of videos that people have literally somewhere here on YouTube of a guy who remade Halloween 1 and 2, the Michael Myers movies, the John Carpenter flick, and the Rick Rosenthal movie, as GTA San Andreas with mods to have Michael and Loomis in that. I couldn't believe it. Being a lifelong horror fan, growing up specifically on the original Halloween and Halloween 2, I watched the hell out of that. I watched the absolute hell out of that. I thought I was the only person who remembered that until somebody posted it on Reddit the other day when I happened to be glancing through one of the GTA or whatever subreddits. That was cool to see somebody else bring that back up. I love the childhood this kind of game gave me. I love the music. I think even the damn loading screens, like I said, have great music that really get you involved and get you excited. This game really embraced the cartoonish nature, and one of the best things I was going to talk about is on YouTube, how you had like the Mythbusters videos, and the people wanted to talk about myths and urban legends in this game. Like, for example, is the girl, I can't remember her name, from the Ring movies, is she in here? Are there aliens? Does Bigfoot exist? Does Leatherface exist out in this cabin in the woods that always scared the hell out of me? And even if you're out there at nighttime in the dark, it's still scary. Even now as an adult, when I had to go out there at one point to get to a location I was going, I stumbled across that cabin again, and it kind of frightened me a little bit. There was a thunderstorm, lightning. I know we're talking about PS2 graphics, but it still really, really messed with me because of how wild the kind of memories were that came with that. This is such a blast of a video game, and I think the fact that people have forgotten how fun it was is really sad. And to see the younger generation, who are like 10 years younger than me that I talk to, that I work with, as a matter of fact, to see these kids talk about newer games and think they're good, not just by story, but I mean like the execution, bringing them to the public when they're released, the way they're formatted, how they have to be downloaded and shit. People nowadays don't understand the fun of what it was like back in the day to get a game, unless you have a Nintendo Switch, to get a game and jump right into it, to play it. Literally put it in the damn console and let it load up immediately, and you play the shit. You don't have to download it for 2 hours. Even with a disc you have to download nowadays. It's bullshit. This game is so wonderful, and to be able to do that should really haunt modern players who don't know about it. If you happen to have younger friends, show them this game. Show them this game, get them into it, because it needs to have a revival in a good way. Definitive Edition was not worth it. In a lot of ways, but I don't think it was a mess. I think it has some messy qualities to it, but it's not a complete and utter failure mess like people seem to say it is. GTA San Andreas, Vice City, and GTA 3 deserved better as a release, but still, at some point I'm going to play through those, even though I bought it recently. I plan on playing through those and doing videos or reviews or whatever about the definitive editions. It's going to take a while. I don't have a whole lot of time. I have a lot of other hobbies like reading and writing and working, for God's sake. I have a lot of other things like my Goosebumps channel where I talk about Goosebumps books. I'm Michael Goosebumps fan in case you want to check that out. And I review all that stuff there. So, anyway, I love this game deeply. I think the story is great. Aside from that one weird character, I love all the other ones pretty much. It's just a blast. It's just a blast. And I will say this too. It's a fucking challenge if you play this on PS2 because some of the stuff... I know the level design isn't amazing for GTA games, specifically this one and Vice City. You kind of just have a storyline and then you're told to shoot at people, or do this or do that. That's kind of how the game typically goes, but there's some variation in here that makes it a little bit better than like Vice City or GTA 3. If you consider those repetitive, this one's kind of there most of the time, but then it has some cool stuff involving planes and whatever. I love how big this map is, but the kind of difficult missions you have, particularly involving fucking planes, is insane to me. There's one particular section everybody remembers. It haunts all of us who had to grow up on this game on PS2. Flight School. Flight School is awful. I absolutely hate it. It's next to impossible. Even this time around, I finished it easier this time than I did back in the day when I was a kid, when I was impatient. I was flustered all the time. But I'm going to admit, I got mad here too, and when I fucked up in the middle of a mission on the Flight School, I yelled at my TV a couple of times watching or playing this time around. Not going to be lying to you, that happened quite a bit. And justifiably so, because if you played the Flight School missions, you know it's bullshit. Zero's missions, which are involving typically RC, cars, planes, that kind of thing. Fuck those too. Yeah, fuck them. I love driving around in this game. I love it. I think the cars handle better than any game out there, including Vice City and GTA 3. I think the cars handle here better than any of the other GTA games. That includes 5 and 4, even though I like 4's driving. I just think that the layout of this city, or these cities, there's like 4 or 5 locations, unlike the other games that typically only have 3, including GTA 4 and kind of GTA 5. Yes, they're massive maps most of the time, but they're not sprawling. They don't have different countrysides and whatever. You can literally go out in the woods and do nothing in this game. You can have hairstyles, customize your clothing. You could kind of change clothes in Vice City. Not really, like I said. But they really have that here, and that was cool. And I loved that about it. And I loved that you could customize cars, dude. That's one big thing I forgot to mention of why I love this game so much, too, and kind of consider it the best of GTA at the time or even now. You could customize cars. You could have lowriders with hydraulics that look like something right out of the 90s. They were great. They're still great. It's just baffling to me how fun this game can be. And again, I just like driving around. I just like driving around in different cities, pretending back in the day, and even now, when I was playing it this time around, and I would go from mission to mission, if I didn't want to speed off to the next mission or fly in a jetpack from a cheat code, yes, there is a jetpack in the game in case you didn't know that, it's wonderful, I love it. If I chose not to do that, I would just drive around and follow the damn street signs. If I had a stop sign, I stopped. You know, if I had a red light, I stopped. If I had a green light, I went. Saw a lot of car crashes. You know, saw a lot of cops chasing people. One of my favorite features I saw in this that I've never seen in any game until I played it this time around. Maybe I missed it back in the day, or maybe I forgot about it. But playing it this time around, this used to happen randomly this time around on this playthrough for the story. I would be driving around, and I would literally just see planes crash. Now, some people, when I watch YouTube videos from particular channels like The Jizzy on YouTube or Real Kevin, when I watch those two great YouTube channels or other people, they seem to mention that planes typically always seem to crash around them. That's never happened to me, as far as I remember, in this game. This time around, I saw it like twice. I'd just be driving down the road in like the countryside in one of the little cities out there, and I would see a plane. I would hear the plane first, but then I would see it coming down out of the sky into like a tree and just blow up. I've never seen that before. I didn't realize that could happen. At first, I thought it was a glitch. It's not. It just kind of happens. The game is so much fun. I love it. I love the environments. I could not sit here for longer without just gushing over it all over again to tell you how fun this game is. Has it aged a little poorly? In very few areas it has. And I will say this too, I love the immaturity of GTA, but I also have aged out of that a little bit too. I'm more of a, I like dark and serious movies. I like Man of Steel, for example, with Henry Cavill, the Superman flick. I like stuff like that. I prefer it to any of the other versions of Superman, even the one I grew up on with the Tim Daly one, the animated series, or Justice League for that matter, or Justice League Unlimited. I prefer darker stories like The Dark Knight. I prefer things like that. So when I played this game around, after all these years, and my exposure and how much time I sunk into like GTA 4, for example, which is a very dark game, this one hadn't aged with me. It is what it is. People change the older they get. So what I'm saying is if you go back to approach this game again, maybe in some ways you're going to think it kind of has moments that aren't as good. Maybe you'll think at first the game isn't as good as it used to be, or maybe it's just always been bad, is what some people will eventually kind of differentiate themselves off to as a mindset. I promise you, just stick with it. Give it some time, let it develop. It's still fun. And if you played it a lot when you were a kid, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun now because you almost have moments like you're returning back to your childhood too, and like you're returning to a place that you know the streets. You know what turn's going to take you where on the streets. I love it. I love it, and I highly, highly, highly recommend Grand Theft Auto San Andreas from 2004. Do you love it, guys? Put your thoughts and comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. And if I had to rate the game on a 5-star basis, I would hands down, give it a 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, it has a bug every once in a while. I had one particular part where I had a tractor trailer. I was driving down the interstate, and the fucking thing flipped on me, and then the damn thing detached from the back of the truck. It sucked. I had to replay that whole mission again, maybe twice. I don't know. That happened a couple of times to me. I love it. I recommend it highly if you haven't played it before. Really, really good game. Really, really, really big recommendation from me. I'm going to get out a couple more reviews after this one for the original Fear game for Xbox 360 and also Vice City, which I recently finished for the first time ever. I've never beaten that game because of how difficult some missions can be. With some practice, this time around I finally beat it as an adult. I am excited to talk about that a little bit. But I do have those reviews coming out, so I hope you'll check out those at some point as well. What are your thoughts on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas once again? Put that down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it, your ranking, your review, all that. Is this your favorite GTA game? Again, for me, probably so. I love the 80s atmosphere of Vice City. It's still great. I love GTA 4's darkness. And I love some other things like Lost and Damned. I love Ballad of Gay Tony. I love Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories. I love all these games pretty much. But San Andreas just stands out. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it is. But it does. What are your thoughts? Put them down below. Thank you for watching, guys. God bless you, and goodbye.